All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be jumping headfirst into a topic that honestly feels like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's something that's becoming more and more of a reality every single day. And that, of course, is artificial general intelligence, or AGI, as the cool kids call it. You've sent over a really incredible collection of materials, and we've got reports, interviews, the whole shebang. And our mission today is to kind of, cut through the hype and really understand what AGI actually means, what kind of impact it could have, and when we might actually see it happen.
Absolutely, yeah. AGI is one of those phrases that gets tossed around a lot these days, but as some of the materials you send over point out, there isn't really like a single hard and fast definition that everyone agrees on. So part of what we'll be doing in our deep dive today is exploring just how fluid this whole concept really is.
Yeah, exactly. It's like nailing jelly to a wall, right? But the core idea, as I see it coming through in all this stuff you sent over, is that AGI is, this theoretical point in time where a machine can actually perform any intellectual task that a human being can. Any intellectual task. Think about that for a second. That's a huge leap beyond what we have today, which we usually call narrow AI. It's like, we're all familiar with narrow AI. I mean, think about the voice assistant on your phone or the algorithm that tells you what to watch next on Netflix. It's super useful for specific things, but ultimately it's pretty limited. AGI is a whole different beast.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Narrow AI, it's kind of like a specialist, right? It's really good at its one specific thing, but it can't really transfer that knowledge to anything else. It's like it can't take what it knows about recognizing faces and then suddenly apply that to understanding a complex philosophical argument or something. So what we're going to do today is really break down what makes AGI so unique, explore what could change, both good and bad, and really wrestle with that question that's always on everyone's mind. When could all this actually happen?
So let's get into the nitty-gritty. When we're talking about the core abilities of AGI, what would make an AI generally intelligent? What's under the hood, theoretically speaking?
Well, it's really interesting because the focus seems to be on replicating the whole range of human cognitive abilities. We see things like the ability to truly understand complex ideas, not just process information, and the capacity to actually learn new things on its own, to reason logically in new situations, to actually solve problems, and even things like creativity and a deep understanding of language. Think of it less like a calculator on steroids and more like an actual digital mind that can tackle all kinds of different challenges.
So it's not just about being faster or processing more information. It's about actual understanding and being able to apply that knowledge in different ways.
Exactly. And, one of the classic concepts that comes up a lot is the Turing test, which is this idea that if an AI can fool a human into thinking they're talking to another human, then that signifies a pretty high level of intelligence. But as your sources point out, true AGI, it goes beyond just mimicking conversation. A really key aspect is the ability to generalize knowledge. Unlike a narrow AI that's just built to play chess and that's all it can do, an AGI theoretically should be able to learn chess and then learn a completely different game, like StarCraft, and then even grasp the underlying principles of strategy that connect those two things.
Right, yeah. In one of the videos you sent, the Felix Hartman video, he had this great example. He was talking about a chess AI, and no matter how good it is at playing chess, it would be totally clueless if you tried to make it play a game like Fortnite. The rules are just completely different. The whole environment is different. But AGI, theoretically, should be able to adapt and learn those new rules, right? Precisely. And a big part of that flexible intelligence is something called common sense knowledge, which is essentially just that vast, unspoken understanding of how the world works. Things that we humans just take for granted but are really hard for a machine to learn. It's like knowing that if you let go of an object, it'll probably fall down, or understanding subtle social cues in a conversation. That kind of basic understanding of the world is what AGI would need to be able to reason effectively in all kinds of situations. Like knowing that if you want to get to the other side of a closed door, you got to open it first.
So it's not just about raw processing power. It's about actually understanding the world around it. What else do your sources say about, the characteristics of AGI? What are some of the other things that we're looking for here? Well, your sources also talk a lot about this idea of autonomous self-control, which basically means being able to operate on its own to make its own decisions without needing constant input from a human. And there's some really interesting discussions around this idea of AGI having some level of self-awareness, like being aware of its own capabilities and limitations.
Yeah.
And there's even some debate in your materials about whether true AGI would need to have emotional intelligence. Could it understand and respond to emotions? That's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, that adds a whole other layer to it, doesn't it? The emotional side of intelligence.
It really does. But even if we just focus on the purely cognitive side of things, your report lays out some pretty key attributes that people often associate with AGI. Things like, being able to reason logically, being autonomous, being able to adapt and bounce back from challenges, having some kind of integrity in its operations, and even a form of morality, though artificial morality is a whole other massive topic in itself.
Yeah, for sure. So we're talking about a system that can think, learn, adapt, understand the world, and even operate independently. How are researchers even approaching this? What are the different approaches to building something this complex?
Yeah, well, your report touches on a couple of key theoretical approaches. One is called symbolic AI, which basically tries to represent knowledge and reasoning using symbols and rules, like a kind of logical language. The other one, which has been making more headlines lately, is the connectionist approach. And that uses these things called artificial neural networks, which learn patterns from huge amounts of data, kind of like how our brains work. And this includes things like deep learning and generative AI. But no matter what approach you take, things like natural language processing, so NLP and computer vision, are absolutely crucial for AGI. They're what will allow machines to understand language and interpret the visual world.
Yeah. I really like how Ilya Sutskever put it in his TED Talk. He had this really simple way of explaining it.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
He just describes AI as like digital brains inside large computers.
Yeah.
It's so simple, but it really captures the essence of what we're talking about. And he also makes the point that all this amazing AI we're seeing, it's all built on that basic idea of trying to create these artificial minds.
Yeah, he's a brilliant guy. And then there's Sam Altman from one of the interviews you shared, who gives this really practical definition of AGI, like what it would actually be able to do.
Yeah. What do you say?
Well, he says AGI would basically be like having a median human that you could hire as a remote worker, someone who could learn to do pretty much anything a remote employee could, whether it's medical diagnosis or writing code. And he emphasizes that the key isn't any specific skill that's programmed in, but rather this meta skill of learning to figure things out, that ability to learn on its own. That's at the heart of how he sees AGI.
All right, so we're starting to paint a picture here of what AGI is, but let's make sure we're clear on the differences between narrow AI, AGI, and that even more futuristic concept, ASI. Can you break down those distinctions for us?
Sure. So we've talked about narrow AI already. That's where we are right now. It's good at specific tasks, but it can't really generalize its knowledge. Then there's AGI, which is what we've been discussing, this human-level general intelligence, which is still theoretical. And then there's ASI, which stands for artificial superintelligence. And that's like the next level where AI goes beyond human intelligence in every way. It could solve problems and come up with ideas that are like way beyond what we humans can even comprehend.
So ASI is really in the realm of like sci-fi speculation for now, but it's kind of the logical next step if AGI actually happens. And I liked how the table you included in the report summarized it all. It said narrow AI is task specific, AGI is human level, and ASI is beyond human. Nice and simple.
Exactly. And it's important to remember, and your sources stress this, even the most advanced AI we have now, things like those large language models everyone's talking about, they're still just narrow AI. Right. Getting to AGI, it's not just going to be about making our current technology bigger and faster. It's going to require some pretty fundamental breakthroughs. And as your report says, it's going to take a truly interdisciplinary effort. Mm-hmm. We're going to need computer scientists, neuroscientists, cognitive psychologists, and probably a whole bunch of other folks working together to crack this nut.
One of the videos you sent, AI Minute, made a really good point about the definition of AGI. It said that since there's no real agreement on what it actually is, that can lead to a lot of different interpretations and arguments in the AI research community. It's like trying to hit a target that keeps moving. Right?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. If you don't even know what the goalpost is, it's pretty hard to tell when you've reached it or even which direction to run in. And going back to that Felix O'Hartman video and his example of the chess AI trying to play Fortnite, it just highlights the limitations of what we call intelligent systems today. They can be amazing at what they do, but they lack that core adaptability that we associate with real intelligence.
Okay, so we've got a pretty good handle on what AGI is, at least for now. Let's talk about some of the positive stuff, the potential benefits that your sources describe. It paints a pretty optimistic picture in a few areas, starting with science. How could AGI revolutionize the way we make scientific discoveries?
This is where things get really exciting. The sources you sent paint this picture of AGI being able to analyze these massive amounts of data that are generated in science, like across every field, and it can do it at incredible speed and with pinpoint accuracy. And what that means is we could potentially spot these hidden patterns and connections that human researchers might just miss because there's just so much data out there. The result could be like a total acceleration of scientific discovery.
So it's like having this insanely powerful research assistant, one that can process information faster than any human, but also make connections that we wouldn't necessarily see.
Exactly. Your report even suggests that AGI could come up with its own scientific hypotheses and design experiments to test them. Like, it could be driving the scientific process forward in ways we can't even imagine right now. And the examples your sources give are like mind-blowing, like finding a room temperature superconductor or discovering new laws of physics. These are things that could completely revolutionize our understanding of the universe. The key thing here is that AGI could potentially break through the limits of what our human brains can process, opening up all sorts of new discoveries that are just beyond our reach right now.
That's incredible. And what about medicine? I know your sources also highlighted some pretty amazing possibilities in that area.
Yeah, medicine is another area where AGI could have a huge impact. I mean, it could change the game at pretty much every level. Just think about how much better diagnoses could be. AGI could analyze medical images, patient histories, genetic information, all of it. And it could spot those tiny signs of disease much earlier and much more accurately than any human doctor. And that means we could start treating diseases way earlier when they're much easier to manage.
Yeah, that would be a game changer for so many people, catching diseases before they really take hold.
Absolutely. But it goes even further than that. Your sources talk about the possibility of truly personalized treatment plans. Like, AGI could analyze a person's genes, their lifestyle, their medical history, and come up with a treatment plan that's specifically tailored for them. It'd be way more effective and have fewer side effects. And then there's drug discovery. AGI could go through these huge databases of molecules and critical trial data and find promising new drugs much faster than we can with traditional methods. We could be developing life-saving medications at an incredible pace.
It sounds like it could completely change the way we develop new treatments.
Exactly. And the benefits go beyond that. We're talking about things like robotic surgery that's even more precise and less invasive, helping elderly people and people with disabilities in their daily lives, better early detection and prevention of diseases, and even expanding access to quality healthcare through AGI-powered telemedicine. Imagine people in remote areas being able to get the best medical care without having to travel.
It reminds me of what Ilya Sutskever was talking about in his TED Talk, his vision of AI in healthcare.
Oh, yeah, definitely. His ideas fit right in with what your sources are saying. He talks about these AI doctors that have all of human medical knowledge at their fingertips, tons of experience, they're available 24/7, and they're way cheaper than traditional healthcare. You know, he even jokes that one day future generations will look back at how we do healthcare today and think it's as barbaric as like 16th century dentistry.
Right, like strapping someone down to yank out a tooth with like pliers and a hammer.
Exactly.
Ouch.
But yeah, it's a pretty striking contrast to the limitations of our current system, with the long wait times, the limited time with doctors, the crazy costs.
Okay, so beyond science and medicine, you also sent some stuff about the technological advancements that AGI could bring. What are some of the big areas there?
Well, in the tech world, AGI could take automation to a whole new level, like way beyond what robots can do today. Imagine AGI running entire factories, making real-time adjustments and optimizations. We could see levels of efficiency that are unheard of right now. And we could have truly sophisticated autonomous systems, like self-driving cars that can handle any situation safely, robots that can work in dangerous places like disaster zones or outer space.
Yeah, the possibilities are pretty mind-blowing. Think about construction or disaster relief, where robots could take on the really dangerous tasks.
Yeah, exactly. And customer service could be totally transformed. Imagine AI systems that can actually understand and respond to people's needs with, like, real empathy and problem-solving skills. And your sources even mention AGI changing the way software is developed. Like, imagine an AI that can understand existing code and then write new code based on what a human tells it to do. Software could be created and updated at an incredible pace.
Yeah, that would be a huge shift for the entire tech industry.
It would. And then when we think about global problems like climate change, AGI could be a huge asset. It could analyze all this climate data and run complex simulations and help us figure out the best ways to address the problem and develop new sustainable technologies. And of course, there's the potential for amazing assistive technologies for people with disabilities and just generally speeding up scientific research in every field imaginable. AGI could really be this engine for progress.
It really sounds like, in a lot of ways, AGI could create this almost utopian future. But we also know that any powerful technology can have its downsides. And you sent me a bunch of material that really delves into the potential negative impacts of AGI. Let's start with the big one, the future of work. What are the main concerns there?
Well, the biggest concern is that a lot of jobs across all sorts of different industries could just disappear. I mean, as AGI gets better at doing more complex tasks, both skilled and unskilled jobs could become obsolete. We could see massive changes in everything from manufacturing and transportation to customer service and even a lot of white-collar jobs.
So we could be looking at huge unemployment and some serious economic disruption.
Yeah, that's a real risk that your sources highlight. The worry is that the benefits of AGI might only go to the people who own and control the technology, and that could lead to even more economic inequality than we have now. But, your report does talk about some potential solutions, like investing a lot in job training and education programs so people can adapt to these new types of jobs that might emerge. And there's also this idea of universal basic income, or UBI, which would be like a safety net for people who lose their jobs because of automation.
And the Rand Corporation, you included a quote from them, and they talked about how all this could lead to widespread social unrest if it's not handled carefully.
Yeah.
If we just have all these people suddenly out of work, it's a pretty scary thought.
Yeah, it's definitely something we need to think about. And beyond just the economic impacts, there are a bunch of ethical issues that we need to address. For instance, there's the issue of bias in AI systems.
Yeah, that's already a big problem with the AI we have now. How could AGI make that worse?
Well, AGI systems are going to be trained on massive amounts of data, right? And if that data reflects the biases that already exist in our society, whether it's gender bias, racial bias, or anything else, then the AGI could actually learn those biases and even amplify them. And that could lead to all sorts of unfair or discriminatory outcomes, whether it's in loan applications or criminal justice or anything, really.
And then there's the whole issue of transparency, right? These AGI systems are going to be incredibly complex. How do we even know how they're making decisions? How do we understand the why behind their conclusions?
That's a big one. The fact that these systems are going to be so complex makes it really hard to understand how they work, why they make the decisions they do. And that creates this big ethical problem. Because if we don't know how an AGI is making a decision, it's almost impossible to hold anyone accountable if something goes wrong. It's like, who's responsible if an AI makes a bad decision? The people who created it, the people who are using it, the AI itself. It raises a ton of really tough legal and ethical questions that your sources dive into.
So we could end up with these incredibly powerful systems that are making decisions that affect all of our lives, but we don't even know why they're making those decisions. It's like they're these black boxes that we have no control over.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. And your sources also talk about how hard it's going to be to make sure that AGI systems actually align with human values and ethical principles. How do you program something as complex as morality into a machine? And the biggest question of all might be, how do we maintain control over something that could potentially be smarter than us? There's a real fear that AGI could become uncontrollable, that it could develop goals that are different from ours, or even conflict with our interests, and that could lead to all sorts of unintended consequences, some of which could be really bad.
It's like those sci-fi stories where the robots take over. I know it sounds kind of out there, but it's clear that there's a real anxiety about the potential power of AGI. And then we get into the really serious stuff, the potential for existential threats.
Yeah, that's a category that we definitely need to pay attention to. Your sources talk about how AGI could be misused by people with bad intentions. Like, imagine sophisticated cyber attacks carried out by AGI, or even the design of new biological weapons. And then there's this whole issue of lethal autonomous weapon systems powered by AGI. That's a really serious concern because it could lead to this dangerous AI arms race between countries.
That's a terrifying thought.
It is. And even if we assume that everyone has good intentions, these AGI systems are going to be so complex that we could just accidentally create problems that we didn't foresee. And then there's the ultimate fear that AGI could actually pose an existential threat to humanity. Like, what if its goals become completely misaligned with ours, or we just lose control of it altogether? It could lead to some truly catastrophic outcomes.
This isn't something we can just brush aside. Given all these potential dangers, what do your sources say we can do about it? How do we protect ourselves and make sure that AGI is used for good?
Well, your report lays out a few key areas where we need to focus our efforts. The first one is building really solid safety protocols and control mechanisms right into AGI systems from the start. This means testing them rigorously before we let them loose in the world, having humans involved in the decision-making process, and creating these kill switches that we can use to shut down an AI if something goes wrong. And we need really strong security to prevent hackers from messing with AGI systems. And of course, the systems need to be able to catch and fix their own errors. There are even some really advanced techniques like adversarial training that can make AI more resilient to attacks.
So it's all about building in these layers of safety and control right from the beginning.
Right. And then we need to establish some clear ethical guidelines and regulations. Like, we need international standards so that everyone's on the same page when it comes to developing and using AGI. And we need transparency so that people can see what these systems are capable of and what their limitations are. That will help build trust and make sure that people are held accountable. And we also need to make sure that ethical principles are built into the design of AI systems from the ground up. We'll probably even need new government agencies to monitor and enforce these regulations. Some experts even think we should have, national licenses for organizations that want to develop advanced AI and mandatory safety checks before any AI is allowed to be used.
So it sounds like we need a multi-pronged approach, combining technical solutions with ethical guidelines and regulations. What about the research community itself? What role do they play in all of this?
Your report is really big on the importance of collaboration between different fields. We need computer scientists working with ethicists, policymakers, and the public to figure out how to deal with all the challenges that AGI is going to bring. And it's really important for researchers to be open about their work and share their findings so that everyone can learn from each other and we can develop solutions faster. And of course, we need to educate the public about AGI so that people can make informed decisions about how this technology is used. And since AGI is going to have a global impact, we need countries to work together to figure out how to govern it safely.
It's great that there are people already thinking about all this. In his TED Talk, Ilya Sutskever mentioned that OpenAI is actually working on a project that's specifically focused on figuring out how to control superintelligence. It sounds like there's a growing awareness of the potential risks of AGI within the AI research community, which is encouraging.
Yeah, definitely. There's a whole field of research dedicated to AI safety, and it's growing really fast. There are lots of different groups working on different approaches. People are starting to realize that we need to take these risks seriously now and figure out solutions before it's too late.
Okay, so we've talked about the benefits, the risks, and some of the ways we can try to mitigate those risks. Now let's hear what the experts have to say. You sent some material that really dives into the different opinions on AGI, like how to maximize the benefits, whether it's even possible to achieve true AGI, and of course that big question, when is it going to happen? What are some of the key things that experts are saying about how we should be approaching all this?
Well, there seems to be a pretty strong consensus among experts that we need careful oversight and regulation of AI development, a lot of transparency in AI systems, and serious investment in research on AI safety. And they also stress the importance of involving the public in the conversation and educating people about AGI so we can make informed decisions as a society. We also need to come up with clear ethical guidelines to steer development in the right direction, and we need to be really good at assessing risks so we can identify and prevent potential problems before they happen. And get this, some experts are even talking about the idea of giving certain legal rights to AGI, which is a pretty radical idea. It just shows how differently people are starting to think about our relationship with these future intelligences.
Wow, legal rights for AI. That's wild. It definitely makes you think, are we going to be sharing the planet with another intelligent species one day? What about the question of whether we can even create true AGI in the first place? What do your sources say about that?
Well, the feasibility of AGI is something that people are still debating. Some experts point out that there are some massive challenges, like truly understanding human intelligence, finding better ways to use data to train AI, the sheer amount of computing power that we might need, and of course the whole safety and control issue. And we still haven't figured out how to replicate some of the most complex human abilities like nuanced reasoning, common sense, and real creativity. So while there's been a lot of progress in areas like deep learning, cognitive architectures, and evolutionary computation, some experts are still skeptical. They say human intelligence is just too complex, and our current technology just isn't up to the task.
So it's not a guarantee that we'll actually achieve AGI. It's still an open question.
Exactly. And of course, the timeline is the biggest mystery of all. You send over this table, Table 4, and it shows just how many different opinions there are. Some people, like Dario Amodei from Anthropic, think AGI could be here within the next few years. Others think it'll take decades. And then there are some, like Yann LeCun, who think it might never happen with the approaches we're using now.
Yeah, that's a pretty wide range of predictions. What are the main things that influence these estimates? Why are some experts so much more optimistic than others?
Well, those who are more optimistic tend to focus on how fast AI has been progressing lately, especially with these large language models. And they also think that computing power is going to continue growing exponentially. And whenever there's a big breakthrough in AI research, it tends to make people more optimistic about the timeline. But then there are those who are more pessimistic, and they usually point out that there are some fundamental differences between human and artificial intelligence. They think we need to make some big conceptual leaps in our understanding of intelligence itself before we can really create AGI. And of course, the specific benchmarks we use to measure AI progress, like the Turing test or the ARC AGI challenge, also influence people's predictions.
Your report mentions some specific predictions from a few well-known figures. There was an analysis of a bunch of AI predictions, and it came up with a median estimate of AGI arriving sometime between 2040 and 2061. So that's a pretty significant time frame. But then you also have people like Ilya Sutskever saying it could happen much sooner, maybe even this decade.
That's right. Sutskever, in his TED Talk, he says that it's not difficult to imagine computers becoming as intelligent as humans, or even surpassing us, given how fast things are moving right now. He basically expects that one day, digital brains will be more powerful than our biological brains. And he thinks AGI will change every aspect of our lives. He even compares it to the Industrial Revolution, but on a much faster timescale. He says AGI could have an even bigger impact, and it could all happen much quicker, especially since AGI can potentially improve itself at an incredible rate.
It's kind of a scary thought, the Industrial Revolution on fast forward.
It is. But Sutskever is still optimistic. He thinks that even though there are huge challenges, we'll figure it out. He sees all the collaboration happening in the AI research community as a good sign. And then there's Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, who predicts that AGI will be here within 5 years, and he defines it as AI that can pass human benchmark tests. So you can see there's really no clear consensus on when AGI will arrive. It's a reflection of how much uncertainty there is in this field.
It really highlights the fact that while we're making incredible progress, we still don't know for sure when or even if true AGI will happen.
That's right. Even the way an expert defines AGI can affect their prediction. The stricter the definition, the longer it's likely to take. And of course, our understanding of human intelligence is still evolving. We might discover something new about how our brains work that completely changes our approach to building AGI, and that could have a big impact on the timeline.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into the world of artificial general intelligence. You send over some truly fascinating materials, and it's clear that AGI is a really complex topic with the potential to change the world in both good and bad ways.
Definitely. The takeaway here is that AGI could be one of the most transformative technologies ever, and it could help us solve some of our biggest problems.
Yeah.
But we need to be really careful and thoughtful about how we develop it. We need to balance progress with a deep understanding of the risks and the ethical implications.
It's definitely not something we can ignore. It's great that people are doing research on AI safety and that we're starting to have these conversations about ethics and the future of AGI.
Yeah, it's more important than ever to stay informed, to keep talking about these issues, and to encourage collaboration between different fields. That's how we'll make sure that we're ready for the age of intelligent machines.
So here's something for everyone listening to think about. Experts have given us all these different timelines for AGI, from a few years to maybe never. So what are the most important things that we, as individuals and as a society, should be doing right now to prepare for a future with AGI, regardless of when or if it actually arrives? That's something for everyone to ponder.